Hi, I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz, Assistant Dean for External Relations at the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Dr. Laurie Paarlberg. Dr. Paarlberg is a member of our faculty and conducts research and teaching and application on a wide range of topics at the community level and indeed around the world. And Dr. Paarlberg, thank you so much for being with us to help us understand who you are and your research. And, one question people often have is, how did you get to this point as a professional? Did something happen in your own schooling, high school, in the college track, something you were researching perhaps? Was there an epiphany moment? Did this evolve over time? How did you wind up where you are today?
Oh, Bill. So I probably always had it in the back of my mind that I would go into academia. I have to confess, I'm a little bit nerdy, but I went to an undergraduate degree program at Purdue, and I had a great opportunity to be asked by a faculty member to engage in research, and that probably caught the hook. But as life happened, I graduated, I left school. I was working in the nonprofit sector in Bloomington, Indiana, and realized, gosh, I have no idea on how to run a nonprofit organization, didn't know HR, didn't know budgeting. So just happened to be in Bloomington on a lark. I applied to their nonprofit management program and got into what was then SPIA. One thing led to another, and I was rehooked back in academia. I love being a student. I love asking questions. So I actually did a mid-career switch. I said, oh, so what if I spend another few years getting a PhD? But that actually led to a career in academia.
And where's your doctoral degree from and in what topic?
Great. So public affairs from what was the School of Public and Environmental Affairs in Bloomington, Indiana, and is now the Paul O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs.
And so
close to home.
So your graduate degrees, master's and doctoral degrees, are from a public affairs school, our good neighbors over at the O'Neill School of Public Affairs, including a concentration in nonprofit management. How about your undergraduate degree?
Oh, I have the best of both worlds. I have a degree in agricultural economics, community development from Purdue University.
And so has that degree informed some of your research now that you're in the academy?
Absolutely. So I studied community philanthropy, the intersection of place and community development and philanthropy. Primarily, I study organizations because I also have a minor in organizational theory and strategic management. So I study place-based organizations like United Way, community foundations that raise and distribute resources within a specific geographic place. But I also ask questions about how place affects individual behavior, individual giving and volunteering, particularly interested in questions of morality, how rural philanthropy is different from what we know about urban philanthropy. I'm interested in questions of equity and diversity in the distributions of resources across place. So clearly, I have this really interesting intersection between my undergraduate degree in community development and then my degree in public affairs.
Topics associated with community, topics associated with rural communities, urban communities, topics associated with the philanthropy within those communities, the collective philanthropy through community foundations and United Ways and so forth. Dr. Paarlberg, it's also my understanding you've done some research and some teaching on management and leadership of philanthropic organizations. Is that correct?
I have. And in some ways, it's almost like another life because right now, most of my research focuses on philanthropy, but my early research when I first got my PhD was about management and leadership of organizations, both government and nonprofit. But now I usually focus on organizations and systems as opposed to pure management theory.
Yeah, help us understand the difference then, organizations and systems with leadership as opposed to management theory of the organizations. Help our audience understand the distinction, which then helps them kind of peek in the door a little bit in terms of what our academic programs look like.
Sure. So most of my research right now about United Ways community foundations is looking at how those systems change from a broad perspective at the community level, rather than diving in to see what individual managers are doing and perhaps how they gather resources, what actions they take to manage staff. So I'm not looking at it that the micro behavior of individuals within organizations, but how collections of organizations work and perhaps how they relate to the community around them.
And as people dive into your research or as students come into our school and attend your courses, when you talk about community foundations in United Ways, both have been with us in the United States for decades. Are you looking back at just the history of these organizations? Are you looking at now and also maybe trying to forecast future trends?
Yeah, so I'm not a deep historian looking back, but I'm really interested in the trends of how the systems are changing. So for about 20 years now, the United Way has been uh, transitioning through a variety of different phases, from community impact to what they're now calling the modern United Way. The community foundation field has also been shifting during that time period. And so, not taking a really long historical approach, I am looking at how the two systems are changing relative to each other.
Can you help us take a deeper dive with that, please? Which also, again, helps our students understand, just the depth and the complexity they're able to marinate in when they attend our school. So, for example, with United Way, workplace giving has changed compared to decades ago. The community foundation world have this being confronted now by donor advised funds in the private wealth sector. Can you help our audience understand some of those distinctions and how your research is informing public policy, the philanthropic sector, even the private sector, which is now holding these DAFs? Help us understand your work in that regard, please.
Oh, wow. Well, so we've got so many projects going on related to all of that. So for instance, I've been working with a doctoral student, and community foundations have long held donor advised funds, but in recent years, they've faced a lot of competition from donor advised funds, from commercial donor advised funds. So one of the things that we've been looking at is who's holding donor advised funds in community foundations, what types of organizations, what percentage of their revenue it makes up. And then recently we've been looking at, so if community foundations are holding donor advised funds, how might that affect their grant making? Because the decisions of individual donors may be very different from the decisions of organizational decision makers, the strategic priorities of community foundations. So one of the things that we've been trying to do is dive into that statistically, looking at large data sets.
And seeing that from the community foundation side, and then on the United Way side, back in the day, the United Way would fund dozens of organizations providing a lot of great work. And now, as you indicated, now more impact, maybe a narrow range of 2 or 3 designated topics. Is your research taking a dive into that aspect as well?
Yeah, so actually, that was the United Way shift back in 2000. Now, in the probably the last year, United Way has announced a new model, the modern United Way. I think we're still up in the air in that, because that is really empowering donors to follow their philanthropic passion. So it isn't clear whether United Ways are going to be moving away from those strategic focus. That's something that I'm going to be following and talking to leaders about in the next few years, is to see how that emerges. Because even though United Ways are part of a larger affiliate system, individual United Ways act in really distinct ways depending upon their community. So one of the things we've been doing this spring is we've been out in the field talking to leaders of both United Ways and community foundations in 10 communities, trying to figure out how they're navigating relationships with each other as these shifts are occurring. They're really fascinating, because what we're seeing is that community foundations and United Ways are both trying to work together and collaborate, but doing so by differentiating their unique value in the community. So it's been really kind of an interesting dance we see going on.
Then how does this research inform your teaching? Do you do specific courses on these topics, or do you, just kind of fold in your research into various courses that you teach? What is your approach as you teach our students?
Well, I am so fortunate because I actually get to teach a course on community foundations, which is a graduate level course. And it's really specific. It's a narrow course, right? Looking at community foundations. And so that's all about the types of things that I've been talking about. How is the field changing? How does revenue structure impact the strategic orientation and direction of organizations? So we do a combination of theory and practice in one course. But in general, I take the same approach when I teach my other courses. So I only get to teach one course on community foundations, but I'm really fortunate because both for the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy and the O'Neill School of Public and Environmental Affairs, I get to teach some of the introduction courses. So what's the introduction to the nonprofit sector and the voluntary sector? And in those courses, I actually take the same approach, and I really get to integrate to things that I'm interested in. So we always do a little bit of theory, a little bit of practice, and then because I really love research, we always try to bring in some data. So just as an example, this past spring, before COVID-19, pre-COVID-19, we were, in my introduction to the nonprofit sector in the O'Neill School, we were actually looking at what nonprofit sectors look like in different neighborhoods. So we selected 3 neighborhoods in Indianapolis, and the undergraduate students were out in these communities, literally driving around, walking the streets, trying to identify all the nonprofit organizations. And what that allowed us to do is to understand how the nonprofit sector looked across neighborhoods, what types of factors may be able to shape the way the sector looks, and then what does that mean for public policy? And the students got their hands dirty, mapping data, and then applying that to theory. So regardless of the courses that I teach, we try to do a little bit of practice, a little bit of theory, and then a little bit of using data to help inform our decision and our understanding of issues.
That is a great description of how your research applies into the classroom, as well as a specific example of how you're carrying that out. And Dr. Paarlberg, I'd like to invite you to describe the distinction between nonprofit management and philanthropic studies. And you're uniquely capable of speaking to that distinction because your academic degrees, your 2 graduate degrees are, from a public policy school that focuses on nonprofit management. Our school focuses on philanthropic studies. And as I'm hearing you talk, I'm hearing that we're not teaching here's how you do this. We're instead teaching, here's the what, let's explore the why, let's dive into the complexities. How would you describe that distinction as students consider entering our school at any of our 3 levels of instruction?
Yeah, I really like that question. And that's a hard question for me, although you said, I'm well suited to answer this. One of the reasons that it's a hard question for me is because I'm constantly merging them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bringing them together to say, okay, so if the field of community foundations is shifting in this way, why is it shifting? Sort of looking at some of the contextual factors that are causing it to shift, and then actually dig into, so what does that mean for the operation of organizations? So in my world, that how it happens is always being blended with some of the theory about what philanthropy does and why it does it. So I'm always jumping back and forth.
So the what and the why informs the leader, the how informs the manager. Management works best with strong leadership, and strong leadership can't be carried out with effective management. Sounds
And
like
and I rarely separate leadership and management. I think that both pieces are necessary in organizations, and that people of a variety of levels are leadership and take on leadership roles.
And that alone describes a distinctive for our school, that you don't stop with one or the other. Again, the students are provided, and I would say in a healthy way, confronted, with that to think about and, really be challenged by with those big questions and that deep research-based information that then they can apply to whatever their passion might be in the philanthropic sector. Dr. Paarlberg, I want to ask you then kind of a last category here. When you think about serving students, whether they're in your classroom or when you're at an academic event, or there are other academic activities on campus or online, or maybe they stay in touch with you as an alumni of our school, what does success look like for you as a member of our faculty as you think about serving our students?
Yeah, well, this ties into my answer about leadership. My ultimate goal is to inspire and empower our next generation of leaders. At heart, I'm an idealist. I'm an idealist, right? I want to make a difference in the world. And sometimes I'm a little disappointed in myself that I'm not out there on the front lines more, making the world a better place. You know, I'm in my office reading and crunching numbers, but I believe that the way I make the world a better place is through the skills and knowledge that I bring to my students, and by enabling them to formally engage in whatever path it is, either as professionals or as citizens, residents, on professional and civic paths. So I'm really trying to think about making an impact through my students and empowering them to be our leaders. But there's also another piece on this on a personal level. I was a first generation college student.
Mhm.
And throughout every stage of my educational process, I've been mentored by some really great individuals who have brought me into their research projects. So one of the things that's important for me is to engage students in my research. And I'm looking now to find some more formal ways, particularly to bring in undergraduate students who may traditionally be underrepresented, and try to, not so much because I want them to go into academia, but I want them to gain greater confidence in their academic abilities, their ability to solve problems, and to fuel their curiosity about the world around them. So ultimately, when I think about my success as a faculty member, it's along those two dimensions: being able to inspire and empower next generation of leaders, and also just to be able to engage students in asking and answering meaningful questions.
You invite our students to explore knowledge in leadership as well as in management. You might not be on the front line, but you're on multiple front lines because of all the students that you serve. And we talk not just about within nonprofit organizations, but as you articulated so well, donors, public policy officials, the public at large. You're touching all of those realms. And a mentor was important to you. Relationships with faculty were important to you in your academic journey, and you're now being very intentional in playing that role for our students as well. Dr. Laurie Paarlberg is an esteemed member of our faculty at the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz.